Today's guest is an award-winning outdoor writer, hunter, wildlife photographer, and videographer, an outfitter and wilderness guide, and you may know him from the Outdoor Channel on television. This guy is phenomenal, and he's doing some really awesome work to preserve history and culture while also helping to manage the species. We have some great conversations in this interview with Jim Shockey.
Are you ready to live life to the full? Are you ready to rise up and live a life of honor? Are you ready to boldly step into a life of courage? This is the Manlihood ManCast, and here's your host, Josh Hatcher.
Gentlemen, welcome to the Manlihood ManCast. I'm your host, Josh Hatcher. I am so glad that you have tuned in today. Listen, I want to do a quick promo for you. Our friends over at Hemp Mafia have made this Manlihood's Apothecary Dirty Beard Oil. It's made with CBD, and it's got peppermint and cinnamon and lavender and lemon in it. And honestly, those oils have some antibacterial properties. The CBD has medicinal properties as well. So this has a lot of benefits, but the biggest benefit is it's going to make your beard smell good and feel good. It's going to smooth out the frizz. It's going to make it shiny, healthy, luxurious, because everybody needs a luxurious beard. So this is on a limited run, which means that we've just got a handful of bottles. If it sells well, if you guys like this, we'll carry it. We'll make it a regular thing. So if you like this and you want this beard oil, go to manlihood.com/store. We've got some other goodies in there for you as well. Just wanted you to know, guys, we've also got a place where you can level up as a man. You can get challenged. You can set goals and dreams, because we've all got dreams. And that dream means nothing if you don't give it a deadline, if you don't break it down to actionable steps, and if you don't have accountability to help you work towards that goal. That's what the Arrows and Iron Brotherhood is all about. It's also about learning the things that we need to learn to be a better husband, to be a better father. We've got courses, we've got ebooks. All of that is available at a variety of different price points, depending on what it is that you're looking for and what you can afford. So that's going to be available for you soon. We're working on all the details. We'll be launching it soon. So if you want to be a part of it, go to manlihood.com/brotherhood. Give us your email address, and we'll get you plugged in. All of that being said, guys, let's get right into our interview with Jim Shockey. Jim, it is great to have you on the Manlihood ManCast today. I've been following your work as an outdoorsman for quite a while, and you're doing some pretty awesome things, man. It's an honor to have you on the show today.
Oh, it's my pleasure, and thanks for the compliments.
So, Jim, why don't you tell me a little bit about maybe some of our listeners? I think a lot of our listeners will be familiar with you and your work with the hunting shows that you do, but maybe you could kind of tell me a little bit more about your life, what it is that you do, and what you're making, man.
That's kind of asking me what my job is, which is multifaceted. I mean, I guess most people probably know me from the outdoor world, the outdoor hunting adventures, our television shows, The Professionals or Uncharted, because I hosted and produced those shows over the last 25 years. We also have television shows that we produce on the Aboriginal Network up here in Canada, ATPN. Our shows are syndicated around the world. So most people know me from that. But there's a segment that'll know me from my antique days. I mean, Country Living did 3 articles on us over the years. Rachel Newman, the editor of Country Living magazine, said that she'd never seen such an enormous and fine collection of ethnocentric furniture. So that's another side. We furnished all of the Ralph Lauren country stores back in the day. So that's the other side of what I do. Then I also author. I've got a novel, little Simon and Schuster gave me a two-book deal, a big giant advance, and that'll be out within the year. It's written. We're just in the editing process with Emily Bessler in New York City, who's like the rock star of editing. So anyway, there's kind of the Coles Notes version, but what I'm really most proud about is our family. To me, that's the most important of all. 2 wonderful children and 4 wonderful grandchildren right now. 38 years of marriage to my soulmate.
Grandchildren are the best, aren't they?
Yeah, there's no question. I mean, that as a parent, it's pretty busy. But once your own children have their children, it's not quite so busy. And 2 hours, you can hand them back to them, and you get all the joy and pleasure without having to do the training. So yeah, grandchildren are wonderful.
That's awesome. So Jim, tell me about your work with the outdoors, with hunting. I mean, you've kind of created a legacy with what it is that you're doing. So how did you get started with hunting and the outdoors? I'm a firm believer that you get one life. So, make the best of that one life. And I just never wanted to be handcuffed to, golden handcuffs to some type of a career that I didn't want to do. So how did J.P. Kinsella say, you build it, they will come. And so if you believe in what you're doing and you put effort into it, you get paid for it. And that's how I essentially started doing what I do now. I love antiques, love art, love ethnographic and tribal art, love traveling, love learning about new cultures, experiencing, all the wonders that those cultures have to provide, and also, these amazing places around this earth. I love to visit all that. So when you tie it all together, and I am a firm adherent to the field at table lifestyle. We have our own little vineyard, our own orchard. We make our own wine, make our own ciders, and we have a garden. Grow our own vegetables. I catch our own fish. Do prawns or crabs. Mostly, I'm a crappie fisherman, but and provide our own meat. So the hunting part of that lifestyle, and also I am firmly of the opinion that all of us who can should be doing what we're able to help the conservation of the wildlife species around the world. So when you tie all that together, you end up with this as a career. It was a pretty orchestrated happening. It wasn't like it was just right place, right time. I guess right skill set certainly helped, but also hard work. I think, but how do they say it? It's not a job. It's I've loved getting up in the morning, love going to bed at night dead tired, and can't wait for the next morning. So that's how I ended up doing what I'm doing. Not just a vision from when I was very young, but I wanted to live my life as I wanted to live my life. Yeah, I know a lot of men who, if they had their way, they would go into a into a career like that. And I think that it's difficult for people to see that it might be possible to find a way to monetize that passion. Did you have a lot of hard work, or was it luck, or how did that all come together for you?
Well, first of all, you take it off the table that I had money to start with. I grew up in a trailer park. The conversation around the dinner table was always whether Dad would get laid off, whether we'd have enough money when we did finally buy a house that we could keep it. I left it home at 17 to go to university. So, and I left with $300, and there certainly was no money on my parents' side. So that's the first thing. There's a necessity when you're not born with a fallback option. It's not a fear of failure, but it's a very strong avoidance of failure, which means if there's 24 hours in a day, then you work, 23, 24 if you can. And you do it day after day after day after day. It's truly hard work. Now, yes, there's a certain skill set that, maybe I was born with. I don't know the way I look. I have no idea. I don't spend a lot of time, at that. I mean, there's lots of people. I was going to mention names that don't have that sort of outdoorsy look, but are very successful in the outdoors. So I honestly believe it's hard work. Luck. Luck. I'm not dead, and I have lots of friends that are dead. So I was lucky in that regard. But luck in making choices and believing in myself. I don't. I think the believing in yourself comes at a far greater power on what you end up doing in your life than just luck. I'm not a firm believer in luck. Time will always mitigate opportunities provided by luck, or if you don't have them, it'll provide for them eventually. So luck is just 50-50. That's not I don't believe that's a big factor in anyone's success, that if they've reached the top of their game in any endeavor.
Yeah. So I know that you've hunted all kinds of animals, all kinds of places. What are some of your favorite places and things that you've hunted? We've lived on moose meat ever since if my dad didn't get a moose in the fall, we didn't go buy a cow. I didn't even know you could buy a cow until I was in high school. It was moose meat or macaroni, literally, for us. So moose is my favorite animal to hunt anywhere around the world. I mean, I've hunted moose in many crazy places, Kamchatka Peninsula and Siberia, Sweden, North America, side to side. Obviously in the northern part of North America, although I have hunted moose also in Utah. So moose are, as a species, just because they're such a fabulous game animal for table fare. You get a lot of meat, and they live in beautiful places. You generally don't find them in the back 40, but unless you live in somewhere where moose are also living, which means your fences probably got knocked down last night. But moose for sure. And the second part of your question, the place. My wife, Louise, asked me. A lot of people know her as Nana Louise. She, if there's a spot within 3 miles, she's pretty happy. So she's not. I wouldn't call her a real tough and rough and ready outdoors woman, but she asked me one time if there's a place that I'd been to in my career that I would like her to see. What place would that be? A rougher place, not because she'd always go with me if we were headed to Spain or Germany or some nice countries. She'd been Tanzania and Mexico, obviously, and Australia. But I told her Ethiopia, the Omo Valley in Ethiopia. Back, I'd say now 30 years ago, Nat Geo said was the last frontier in Africa, and it truly was. The Omo Valley, culturally, just the wildlife, the remoteness, the lack of influence by the outside world, and it's Ethiopia as a country is spectacular. The number of different languages, cultures, and to be with the Hammer and the Kara people in the Omo Valley back then was truly amazing. Other than the AK-47s, which were ubiquitous, because it's between Sudan and Somalia, it was truly an amazing place. I think now it's been dammed over, and the Omo River's been dammed, and I think it's a village or town or city of 20,000 people, mostly, from China. They've like I say, they're looking for power and resources. So I think it's not the same now, but that's still to this day my favorite place. And I would say the same thing to anybody. If they can get to Ethiopia, Omo Valley, maybe not so much anymore, but in that region, it's spectacular.
It sounds like a beautiful place. I've been in West Africa, and it was beautiful, but I've never been on the other side of the continent. So that would be a pretty cool thing to see.
Yeah, West Africa is not common for people to go to. It's again a wondrous place, but not a place I'd take my wife. There's good countries, Ghana, but you get Liberia and Burkina Faso nowadays. It's pretty, it can be pretty rough, but it is, the West Africa is awesome.
What, so if moose is your favorite animal to hunt, have you ever had, or how much prep goes into a hunt when you go? Do you have to do a lot of planning? Do you use game cameras to kind of track? What do you do when you're prepping that?
Well, I just to give you an idea of where I hunt moose, our outfitting territory, the Rogue River Outfitters, which is another one of my facets of my career. I'm an outfitter. I have guides, and we take people into the wilderness areas of North America. And my outfitting territory in the Yukon, the Rogue River Outfitting Territory, is 12,000 square miles, so over 7 million acres. There's not a single road in that entire area. All access is by airplane. You can get some way into the territory by boat, but not very far by jet boat. So it's not the same as setting up trail cameras and scouting and things like that. For preparation, it's far more logistically demanding than just hunting on the back 40. As I said earlier, we have airplanes. My airplane's up there right now. We're hitting all our camps to see how many have been destroyed by grizzly bears. We probably got 30 camps up there, cabins and on different lakes and along the rivers, and we have to every year go through this process of what have the grizzly bears destroyed. So there's part of it. So I've got people up there right now. Season doesn't open until August 1st, but they've already been up there for a month. Last year we crashed my airplane. These are the kind of things we deal with, not a failed SIM card for on a trail camp. People die doing what we do, and so the preparation ahead of time is you control every factor that you can control, and then you react, according to the 5 rules, which every one of my guides can recite instantly, is safety, 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 and safety. And even with all that, there's still objective dangers. Like I say, we lost an airplane last year. We're lucky we didn't lose a pilot. I had 3 of our main pilots have died in the last 20 years. Airplane crashes, in the mountains, and it's, so that's what we deal with is just a little bit different level of preparation on top of, the physical preparation for my own personal hunts. I mean, as I'm talking to you right now, I'm walking back and forth. I'm trying to get my average 12,500 steps in every single day of the year. So, I'm going to keep walking, even though I've got an injured knee right now. I've got golfing, like walk and carry my clubs, or, push them on a little 3-wheeler. But, that just active. You have, if you want to increase the odds in your favor of coming out safely, then you go in as good a physical shape as you possibly can. Now, our clients that we take, and we'll take 50 moose hunters this year for sure, or in that range anyway. We look after the details, so they don't have to be Superman to come on our hunts. We will make sure we take care of it, but the guides have to be. So that's all part of the preparation.
So when you get out in the thick of it, I imagine there's a lot of, like you said, that training with safety, just to make sure that you've got a plan for most circumstances that can come your way. Have you personally, the plane crash seems like a very dangerous experience. Do you find yourself in a lot of danger while you're hunting?
You don't look at it like that because it's what you choose to do. I'm looking at a boat going across the ocean right now, and they're in a lot of danger. If he goes 200 yards to his left, he's going to crash on the rocks, or 200 yards this way. Driving a car, you get into it every time. You're coming at other vehicles 60 miles an hour, and you don't know what the other driver's doing or how good he is at what he's doing. So you're in danger every single time you're doing anything that you do. So this is what we do. So I don't look at it as danger. That said, at the end of the season, I have to say I do a little quiet prayer of thanks when we get out of it with nobody, no major injuries, nobody hurt. So I don't know that most people have that kind of a thought after they make it through a day of work, but we do. It's a nightmare to lose somebody on your watch.
Yeah. When you are out and you're looking for moose, you talked about the grizzly bears destroying camps. Have you encountered many predators while you're hunting, and do you hunt predators as well? The question should be, do the predators hunt us as well? We had a grizzly bear last year that was literally on the front steps. The guys had to shoot it. In one of my camps 2 years ago, it'll be 4 years ago, the trapper he had a cabin just down at the other end of the lake. And when I say lake, it's an hour and a half airplane ride to get to this lake. And we have a camp, several cabins, just, it's one of our main camps. And it's, what was it, 6-7 years ago, we had to shoot a grizzly bear that was trying to break through the door of a cabin to get at one of the guys that was sleeping in that cabin. These are little tiny cabins, just big enough for a bed, basically. One of the other guys heard the screaming and had to go out and shoot the bear, trying to get our guide. And a few years later, the trapper was at his end of the lake with his wife and a 1-year-old daughter, and grizzly bear killed her and the daughter. So you're have I ever encountered grizzly bears? Yeah, of course. They're everywhere out there. I've said before, it's almost a grizzly bear plague. When you manage a species for more of that species for 60 years, you end up with more of that species. And eventually someone has to make the hard choice of managing that species, just like you have to manage every wildlife species in the planet these days. There truly is not, in this entire world, go to the largest species, down, not down to bacteria and even mice, but the bigger than the bread box size animals, they're managed everywhere in this world. There is no unmanaged wildlife species anymore, and that is the same for predators. Like I say, you manage it for more of them over the years, you eventually end up with more of them, and then you have to make that choice. What do you do with them? You're now starting to affect, because of human involvement and human meddling, you're affecting the balance of nature out there. And people can say, well, nature will take care of its own. Yeah, it will, except nature on its own didn't provide roads, logging roads for wolves to run, turning them into uber predators. And I guess the other way to look at that philosophically is, are we a part of nature, or are we above nature? And again, this is not, we don't have time to get into that question, but the bottom line is, for the conservation of all wildlife species, and with humans, we're here, we're not going away. There's almost 8 billion of us now, so people have to get over it. We're here, and what we've caused, and where we are, and now we have to somehow figure out a way to make sure that we have the wildlife species looked after as well. We've taken great care of the 7 billion cows in the world, and the 25 billion chickens in the world, and 6 million goats and 6 million sheep. You can look up those numbers if you want. We've replaced wildlife with those type of domesticated animals. So whatever is left out there that's wild, we have a responsibility to look after. And that doesn't mean creating an ecosystem with 10,000 grizzly bears and no moose. And it's a reality. So that gets back to your question about predator hunting. The predators are hunting us up there, and eventually someone's going to have to make a decision to manage the predators just like they manage the ungulates. Yeah. Yeah. I think about that a lot. Where I live in Pennsylvania, it's in the middle of an Allegheny National Forest, and we don't have many predators here anymore. We have some coyotes, we have some, small game predators, fishers and things like that. But, I think about the fact that really man is the apex predator. And that may be the case, but there are still things that eat us. So,
yeah. I mean, the first get away from there and into the wildlands, you go a few thousand miles west and north, and it's very much still a kill or be killed country up there. Even though many people have you believe that you can, if you're nice to them, they'll be nice to you, and you might as well just dress yourself up like a bonbon if that's what you're planning in the really remote area. It's a rough world. The real world that runs like it used to with very little human influences. It's a rough place.
Yeah. Jim, what's been your most challenging hunt?
I mean, it's a multifaceted question, but I was on a sheep hunt, a Dall sheep hunt in the Yukon way back in the day, and it was the first hunt. There's many places around this world where you have to go with guides. You can't just do a solo hunt. It's not legal if you're not a resident. So I, had to hire a guide outfitter, and I didn't have a lot of money in those days, but I wanted the experience, and to me it was, I'll take the experiences any day over the money, because money, has its favorites, and ours will always go back to them. But nobody can take away your experiences of your lifetime. So I spent this money that was a lot for our family in the day, and I thought I was in shape until I started climbing around those mountains with a 50-pound backpack on my back, and only enough food to last, about 3 days. And it was scheduled to be a 14-day backpack hunt. It was been rainy, wet, cold, sleety, every worst weather condition you can imagine. And on about day 7, we found a ram that was legal, but it was young. And the guide, Rod Collins was his name, one of the greatest outdoorsmen I've ever had the honor of spending time in the wildlands with. He said, look, you can shoot that. It's legal and your hunt's over, but you're going to have to look at that for the rest of your life, knowing that you compromised. You took the easy route, and you didn't risk anything. You killed the animal, which gets rid of that pressure. That's not what hunting's all about. And so I had, at that point, had to dig down deep and look at my motivation for hunting. The challenge that I wanted for myself, required of myself, to prove to myself what I was capable of. And so I didn't take that shot. And we kept hunting. And I think at that moment I realized, as much as I wanted to quit, as hurt as I was, tired, hungry, exhausted, I was capable of more. And much more, I realized. I think about day 10 or 11, we finally bumped into an ancient old ram that to this day I look at with pride. And the memories are, it's, I think I did honor to myself on that hunt. So that is one of my favorite hunts, just because I think it's the point, that point of epiphany where you realize what you're capable of, going into something where you've never actually been pushed to your limits. On that hunt I was.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's a great story. Do you keep many trophies from your hunts? Or, I know you definitely use the food. You talked about that. Do you keep trophies on occasion or often, or what do you do with that?
It depends how you define trophies. A trophy by definition is a memory of an event or a place, or a thing that reminds you of an event or a place, an accomplishment. So standing on the podium, getting your picture taken after winning a swimming race is, that's a trophy. So yeah, I take trophies every single time, memories. And that's what I bring back from every hunt. You know, if the animal has antlers or horns, you know, the first thing you take out is the meat by law in many places, and every ounce of meat has to come out in most constituencies around this world these days. You know, the world is protein starved, so there's no meat wasted on any animal. So at that point, you know, what's the pieces that aren't, you know, you're not able to use? Well, the antlers, but, you know, the horns of an animal. But historically, since the beginning of time, you know, they've shown, you know, that hunter-gatherers have dragged back the antlers and horns. They haven't been able to use them, but they still drag them back. You know, why is that? Again, it's because it's a memory of an event, an accomplishment. So, you know, those are things that I think it's disrespectful to just let them rot out in the wildlands. You know, and I don't know, rot. You start getting into a question, maybe it's better for the environment. Well, you know, you're leaving the you know, the antlers of a moose out there for a mouse to chew on, which provides valuable. My brain's gone dead here. From calcium for you know, for their survival. So that's a good thing. And just, you know, you get into again the philosophical question. Well, what about does every piece of a animal have to pass through a human gut to make it to justify the hunting of that animal? You know, is that necessary, or maybe, you know, more of the animals should be left out there, shared with the other denizens of the wildlands? So, you know, again, this whole trophy business and, you know, the negativity associated with it on trophy hunting. You know, the reality is that there's not one person that I've ever met that hunts. There's this classic negative definition of a trophy hunter. Selective, yeah. You heard my story. I didn't want to shoot a younger ram that was perfectly legal, but that ram was in prime breeding age. The ram I took would never live the winter out and was way past breeding age. So, you know, is that trophy hunting? You know, I don't know. Did I bring the horns back? Yeah, I did. And are they in the museum? Yeah, and a full body mount, so that everybody from here going forward, as long as that organic material will last, gets to, you know, be close to a magnificent, mature doll sheep. So yes, you know, the short answer is yes. It's just, I think you have to be very careful. It's a nuanced term and a nuanced question. I think that for someone that's not aware of all the facts, you know, they simplify it into trophy hunters are bad. Well, they don't exist anymore. You know, that's long gone. That's a thing of the olden days. It doesn't happen nowadays.
Yeah, I think there's especially when you talk about the fact that every species needs to be managed, and I think a lot of people don't realize or understand that there's not people going out there just. There may be some, you know, poachers and things like that in parts of the world, but I think responsible hunters out there their goal is to manage and to control the population in a way that's good for the whole ecosystem. So I think that's a really awesome concept to think about. Yeah.
And just to be part of the ecosystem, not a voyeur looking in on it, but to actually be an active participant. You know, there's many people that are so far removed that they think that, well, as I said earlier, we're not part of nature, we're above nature anymore. But you know, that's not the reality around the world. That's ivory tower reality in the big cities. But there's many parts of this world that are still, you know, us and nature are very closely entwined. And it's just the big cities, we've paved over everything, destroyed the habitat of the wildlife that lived there. And the people there just have television versions of what wildlife's all about. And so you know, it's fair enough. It's you know, they don't have time to educate themselves about what the reality is. But yeah. We are responsible for the wildlife around this world, and we better take that responsibility, you know, seriously, like real hunters do. And poachers are not hunters, by the way. They're an aberration. It's like saying someone's a good citizen because they took money out of their bank account. But, if you use a gun when you do it, that's poaching or stealing. It's not. They're lawbreakers, and they should be put in jail.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think a lot about just the way that as a culture we have separated ourselves from the entire process of where our food comes from. When my kids were younger, we raised meat chickens and rabbits, and they were a part of seeing, hey, this food that we're eating, we raised it, we grew it, we took care of it, we processed it ourselves. Because, when you go and you get it at the grocery store, everything's so separate. Even vegetables, you go and you buy something, you have nothing invested in that. And I think as a culture, we're kind of missing something important when we get so separated from where our food comes from. So I love the idea of hunting and feeding your family with what you can find in nature.
Yeah, that's. I don't think there's a truer way to live than the field to table lifestyle. And like I say, we have our garden. I was just out there yesterday, brought in all the black currants, and was picking peas and fresh beans. I mean, I know how much work goes into making that garden. It's not a factory garden. If people would take responsibility for their own needs in terms of food, and that goes for vegans. Great, make a garden. You don't have to kill something to survive. Grow your soybeans and see how much work it is. But don't think that you're above someone who goes out and also eats meat and catches up in the Arctic a whale for the Inuit, a beluga whale. I mean, you can't judge some people like that if you don't live that lifestyle. So it's really, really important. I agree with you 100% that we know and understand what it's, the food that we consume, what allows us to survive. Is, we just wash our hands of the factory farms, which has to be because there's, almost 8 billion of us. I'm not disparaging those either, but people should be made to go see what's involved. They should be required to go work on a factory farm, weeding garden out there somewhere, so that, a couple of days a week. I mean, you can imagine how wonderful this world would be if people went out there and got away from their cell phones and televisions and computer screens and put some effort into providing for themselves. I don't know that it'll ever happen, and it's probably not politically correct to say that, but I do think that this world will be a lot better place if people understood where food comes from and what's involved with getting that food to their table.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Jim, tell me a little bit about the book that you're writing. You said it's written and being edited. What's your story about?
Well, it's roughly based on, the 64 years of my life. At 10 years of age, I knew I wanted to create a museum, our Hand of Man Museum, up on Vancouver Island, and I knew what would be in it. I knew the places I wanted to go and what would be required of, I learned over time to accomplish that goal. But I also wanted to be a novelist at that time. The museum, I started collecting seashells and fishing lures, pretty rocks, insects. I could afford that. Like I say, we were living in a trailer park way back when. But when I started my novel at 10, and I literally did start it, I kept my little manuscript behind some bricks, that were just undercover at our house. And I realized pretty quickly that there's actually skill involved with writing, and I didn't have a story to tell. So I lived life, and now I've got a story to tell. So I wrote a fictional version of, it's a large part fact. It'll be up to everybody to decide what part is fiction, what part is fact, and it's a thriller. Kind of, if you took Da Vinci Code and mixed in a little girl with a dragon tattoo, with a little Hunger Games, with a little Smila's Sense of Snow, you'll get sort of a sense of what the book is about. It's a serious novel, a thriller, commercial fiction that'll be out next year. Simon & Schuster are publishing it, and Emily Bessler is my editor. She's the rock star over there in New York City for these these type of books.
That's awesome. I can't wait to read it. So I'll be watching for that to come out. That'll be awesome. Jim, I like to ask all of my guests a few questions, and I like to hear the different responses that we get, and we do get a diversity of responses to these, and I think that's been kind of fun. And the first one is, what does it take to be a man?
Well, the answer to that's pretty simple. If you have to ask that question, then you're not. So you don't, you are what you are, and you're not, like someone like myself. And I consider myself to be male. That's never been a question that I would ever ask myself. And I even as I'm sitting here talking about it, I'm thinking about, my guides are very capable, self-sufficient, self-reliant. It's just not a question that they would ask themselves, but I would consider every one of them a man. So what does it take? Self-confidence, self-reliance, a belief in yourself. I mean, it's I don't think there's any difference for what does it take to be a woman. And if everybody is standing there shouting at you and saying, it's horrible to be what you are, but you know what you are, and who cares? So like I say, that comes. There's no self-doubt. There's no. I don't care what other people think, and I'm thrilled for everybody else in how they look at their lives. But as I said, the men that I know don't. That's not a question they would ever ask themselves. So it kind of, like I say, if you have to ask yourself that question, you're not. There's no self-doubt involved. You just are what you are, and there's no. To me, it's an odd question because it's. I'm not saying it's a bad question. It's just an odd one because a man doesn't ask that question of themselves. They don't need to.
Yeah, no, I understand that completely. I think that our identity is something that a lot of people out there do struggle with today, and I think that there's something to be said about somebody who knows who he is and can stand firm in that. So I fully understand that response. I get you. So was there a moment in your life between boyhood and manhood when you knew that difference, when you could sense that something had changed?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I had a very clear vision at the age of 10, what I was going to, what I intended to do with my life. And I just made sure I worked towards that. So, there's, I never had any of this, what do they call it? Not menopause for men, when you turn 50. I've done exactly what I wanted to with this one life. So there's not one single regret, and there's not, it's a pretty natural thing. We kind of, we're born and, we're young, we're adolescents, and we, consider to be adults, and then we get old age and pass away. The process is not a complicated process, and there's no reason, for me anyway, the self-analysis, what a waste of time. So it's never been a point in my life where I determined, wow, I'm a man now, because then you're analyzing something that's just a natural process, and it happens. Now, there is many societies around the world, and I've been involved with them, where they, there's coming of age ceremonies that, and tests where the young men have to pass, and thank goodness we didn't have to do that. But again, in their societies, tougher world, they, you had to be a tougher person. You want to hang by your pectoral muscles on hooks for a day, to prove that you're a man, or kill a lion with a spear. I mean, thank goodness we didn't have to do that in our worlds. But culturally, we didn't have to. So like I say, it's not like there's an epiphany or a moment when you go, wow, I'm a man. For me, and I'm not speaking for everybody. Maybe everybody's experiences are different, and I think that's the beauty of it is tolerance of other people's point of views. I don't get it, but that doesn't mean it's wrong. I think if someone wants to spend, going to drumming sessions and screaming primal, holding hands in a circle around a fire, have at it. I think that's great if that makes them feel good. I don't get it, but I'm not talking about tribes around the world. I'm talking about people from urban centers that maybe are a little detached from, or that might ask themselves these same questions. The identity, I don't see an identity crisis, not at all, for people that are living pretty natural lives. I think if you're an unnatural life, you can lose your way, and again, if that all helps, then have at it. And if they want to analyze themselves and figure out, on this day I turned to be a man, then great. But by the same token, we all have to be able to laugh at ourselves and have the confidence and take ourselves so seriously that we can't, kind of giggle at each other's foibles and make the world a lighter place.
I have a tendency to laugh at all the wrong times, and somebody always gets mad about it. But when you describe the perspective there, it reminds me a lot of the Marcus Aurelius quote that says, "Stop arguing about what a good man is and just be one." So I think that makes a lot of sense. I think that makes a lot of sense. And you mentioned when you were 10 that you knew what the life that you wanted to live, which kind of brings me to my next question, Jim, which is, if you were to run into the 10-year-old version of yourself and have the opportunity to speak into his life and talk to him, what do you want him to know?
I wouldn't tell him a darn thing. I would, I think it would be stealing from that child at 10, because you take away, if you give too much, you take away the joy of accomplishment. And you also take away the threat of failure. You give them the secrets to life at that age, or advice, without them discovering and learning on their own and seeking advice from people that they respect, and learning who to respect to get that advice from. Every single thing you take away from that child takes away from what they will look back on their life as being. Did I do anything, or was I just given a bunch of money and never really had to do anything, never had a risk? I took the easy way out the whole way. I wouldn't tell that little boy anything. I'd just say, have at it and enjoy this ride, this one life we get to live. And because I know myself at the age of 10, I was already predestined to do what I've done in my life, to create this Hand of Man museum, to write this novel, and to produce the television show, share with the world this amazing planet we live in, to do as much as I possibly could for conservation, to help the armed forces, to enjoy the art created by human beings. I wouldn't. I knew I was going to do that at that age, so I wouldn't give that little boy any advice whatsoever. I'd just say, nice to meet you, and I'll talk to you in 54 years. we got a lot to talk about by then.
I love it. I think it's a great perspective, Jim. So before I get to my last question, and this is something we kind of briefly touched on, but maybe you could tell me a little bit more about your Hand of Man Museum. What's that all about, man?
Yeah, it's, as I said, from the age of 10, I had a very clear vision of what I wanted to do. And it was a lot of maybe pie in the sky dreaming at that time. I had National Geographic magazines that I did have access to. So I figured out what I wanted to see with this one life, what I wanted to accomplish. what I wanted to gather together and why do it all, it seemed to me important to share anything. I don't believe you own anything. You're just a steward of it while you're alive. So, I endeavored from that point on. So I'm 64. So more than half a century, I followed that plan and gathered together. Many of the animals that I've gone after around the world, you can't buy them, and nor should you be able to buy them. I don't think. Well, that's a different story. But the commercial trade in wildlife species, I think, has never done a good deed to those species. And if people want wild animals or wild fish, even, they should have to go catch it. Again, we get back to that gardening question. So I traveled around the world, gathered the art of wherever I was, as much, as long as it was legal and you could get export and import permits for it, which was half of my gray hair comes from that. The other half comes from our daughter, Eva. So I spent a lifetime, gathering these objects together. And then we picked up a building that's about 17,000 square feet. It was actually our children's private school, or not private, public school that they went to when they were young. The government sold it off and wanted it torn down, but I bought them on it, and we got commercial zoning for it, and now we'll have 25,000 visitors this year through our museum. And because of the humble beginnings that I started from, I've kept it donation only. I could never have afforded to go into a museum if there was a cover charge, but I would have lived there if it was by donation. That would have been the curator's nightmare. And so it's always going to be donation as long as I'm in control. We've actually started the process. We've to create a foundation and donate the land, the building, the contents, and give it a bunch of money so it'll, our great-great-grandchildren will be able to walk in there, and everybody else's great-great-grandchildren will be able to walk in there and enjoy these things from around the world. And unlike a regular museum that's fairly academic, this one is, it's a story. And if anyone goes online, just Google it, and look at the reviews. You're going to get 1 in 1,000 people that hates it, and they're very vocal, and I get it. That's fair enough. Like I say, that's part of being tolerant, is accepting. It's not for everybody, but it's literally 1 in 1,000. So, it's something that we can give back to the community. I think it was Karl Marx that said, to those according to their need, from those according to their ability. And I'm sure there's people out there right now crinkling up their noses that I've quoted Karl Marx, but it's not a bad thing to give back to the community, and no one owns anything. You're just a steward of it while you're alive. So this is our gift back to our local community, and obviously, the 25,000 that's this year. It's been open 3 years, and that number is going to rise. And if we can help people that way, then that's what we do. So that's what the museum is about. It's 50 years of driving in one direction, no side cuts, no shortcuts, and never stopping. And you eventually end up somewhere, and that's our Hand to Man Museum.
That's awesome. My last question for you, Jim, is what is your best advice for the men that are listening today?
Well, I mean, it's the same advice I'd give anybody at any age, is you get one life. You don't get do-overs on this one life we're given. So why choose to spend the time in this one life doing something that you don't love to do? I mean, it makes no sense to me. And if you live that way, you'll never end up with regrets. That I could be standing here right now talking to you, and a seagull could fly, dive bomb me and kill me, and it would be, there's not one regret, because when you choose to live the life that you want to live, and don't let other people choose for you and determine for you, if it's a good way to live, a bad way to live. You just do what you love doing, obviously within the letter of the law, and morality and ethics. Those are all constraints that people put on themselves, and live this life. It's one life. You don't get a chance to do it again, and you don't want to be reaching old age and have regrets. I think that's the saddest thing when I see that. So just grab life, live it, 100 miles an hour. It's one crack at it. Do it right.
That's excellent advice, my friend. I really appreciate you taking the time to share it with me. If our listeners want to connect with you, what's the best way they can do that?
Let's see, it would be jimshockey.com. We've got a website, Hand-to-Man Museum. If they Google that, they're going to be able to reach me. I think we're on all the, we probably have over, 1.2 million Facebook and social media fans, Instagram, Twitter. We're on all those. I'm constantly, posting on those platforms. So that's also a good way to follow what we're doing. And it's not, it's not about hunting. It's about life.
Yeah.
That's, I say, the most important thing we're granted. So that's what my posts are about. And the best way to sort of follow the, our fields at table lifestyle philosophy.
Awesome. Well, I'll make sure to link that in the show notes as well, so people can check it out and get in touch with you and see the work you're doing. So I really appreciate you taking the time to talk with me today, man. Thank you.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. It was really fun.
Awesome. Thanks. Jim, thank you so much for taking the time to interview with us here today on the Manlihood ManCast. I appreciate everything you shared with us. I appreciate your perspective. Guys, if you are appreciating what you're hearing from Jim, please check out the links in the show notes. Let's go show him some love, some support. Let's interact with him and see what else we can learn from the amazing work that he's doing. Guys, I love you guys. I care about you, and I'll see you next time.
If you want to be a better man, check out our website, manlihood.com, for blogs, videos, and more from our Manlihood team. And you can also join our private Facebook group, Manlihood Man Cave, where you can meet up with a band of brothers who will challenge you and help you on your journey of manhood. This episode is produced by Hatcher Media for manlihood.com. Be sure to subscribe and leave us a review on iTunes, YouTube, or wherever you're listening to the show. Tune in again for more of the Manlihood ManCast.